Hi guys, it's Joseph, and in this video I've been wanting to make this video for so long, because it perfectly describes how this TMS thing goes, how this OCD thing goes, how this anxiety thing goes. Today's video is about the downward spiral of TMS, anxiety, OCD, and the upward spiral of recovery. So let's talk about it. What's the downward spiral of TMS, anxiety, and recovery? Okay, the root cause of all these things, anxiety, TMS, OCD, recovery, is the brain's desire for control and the brain's desire to prevent and avoid pain, suffering, loss, abandonment, separation, ill health, all of our core fears that we all share as human beings. So, what the result of that are defense mechanisms to avoid pain, to avoid emotional pain and unpleasant emotions, to avoid things that are really out of our control and try and control those things. So you see, like TMSers, they don't do well with negative emotions. They have sensitized nervous systems that produce very strong emotions, and they don't react well to those emotions. Instead of allowing those emotions, the TMS or OCD anxiety person intellectualizes, solves, analyzes, instead of just feeling and letting the feeling pass. And try to control those feelings, try and make them go away, try and push them away, try and shut them out. That's called emotional repression, which Arnold talked a lot about, right? So from the jump, the TMSer, for whatever reason, childhood trauma, maybe their parents taught them some bad coping habits, or they were just never taught, and maybe they just do it on their own. But for whatever reason, and the reason doesn't matter because the treatment is the same at the end, but for whatever reason, this person doesn't cope well with negative emotions, or even maybe healthy emotions. Maybe joy and happiness were not allowed in their household. Maybe joy and happiness are deemed for whatever reason as a threat to this person. So this person doesn't deal well with adversity, with negative emotions that come with adversity, rejection, all these things, challenges in life. And usually that will lead to a TMS symptom. So the person doesn't cope well with life. Maybe there's some life circumstances that take place that lead to the brain creating a symptom, or the brain and body, the stress becomes so high that the brain and body starts creating symptoms, right? So the symptoms come. And what is a person who doesn't deal well with adversity, with negative emotions, with anything going wrong in their life, with anything out of their control not going well, do when they have a bodily symptom? They fucking freak out. So that person freaks out, maybe goes on Google. There's the beginning of a health anxiety disorder. Goes on Google, freaks out, starts looking at the worst case scenario, starts catastrophizing. Okay, then they're going to go to a doctor usually, and that doctor either won't find something wrong, even though this person's in pain, and so they're not going to get help from that doctor because the doctor doesn't know what's wrong, because there's nothing wrong. But most doctors don't know about psychosomatic theory, so they're not going to tell this person their brain's causing that. That was my experience. No doctors helped me. All they could ever tell me was, we don't know what's wrong with you. And that freaks you out even more. That traumatizes you even more, because you're like, what the fuck? If this person who just studied for 8 to 10 years can't figure out what the fuck's wrong with me, I must be really fucked up. So there's that. Or even, I don't know which one is worse, but what I would think might be worse is the other thing that happens, where a doctor will tell you a very negative thing and then create a nocebo effect. So a doctor might tell someone, you're going to be in pain for the rest of your life. You have, they might diagnose you with a label that is psychosomatic, but then leave you without hope. So like CRPS, fibromyalgia, right? These are all labels that are medical terms for psychosomatic illness. It's just TMS. It's a brain-created condition, and the same brain can turn it off. So they might tell you, hey, you have CRPS, you have fibromyalgia, you have, what's another one? Carpal tunnel, RSI. You need this surgery, or you need this treatment, but You know, you're probably not going to get better. You know, you might get a surgery and then it doesn't help. Or, you know, the doctor might tell you you're just going to have to cope and manage with it. Here's some pain pills, and then they might or might not work. And you just think that you're doomed to this life of chronic symptoms and chronic pain. So the person goes into the medical mill in a country where psychosomatic illness is not taken serious, psychosomatic theory is not taken serious. Dr. Sarno was considered a quack. It was been said that there's people in his building and in hospital that wouldn't even eat lunch with him, like he was an outcast. I mean, it's insane how much the community rejects this type of information. The truth, it rejects the truth. And so in one way or another, usually this person gets fucked up by the medical industry, by doctors, okay? Whether the doctors were well-intentioned or not, there are some doctors that are ill-intentioned, but I think a lot of them are well-intentioned. The person gets fucked up and more traumatized, right? More scared, more fearful, okay? So then this person is going to be hopeless. They're going to have symptoms. Then this turns into a mad scientist trying to figure out what the fuck is wrong with me. And that's what I did. I went on this mad scientist journey trying to figure out what was wrong with me, what I could do about it. And when the doctors weren't helping me, I went into this, I'm going to figure this out myself. And part of that determination was how I did find recovery, but I did it in a very compulsive way, and that's usually what's going to happen with people. So they're going to start compulsively information seeking and information gathering. Once again, nothing wrong with doing that. I got better because I found the information that I needed, but I did it in a very compulsive way that added lots of stress and more fear, right? And I had no idea that the fear and the stress and the compulsivity was the disorder itself. So I changed my diet. I did all kinds of things. I avoided things that cause pain, which is also what doctors might tell you to do. Doctors might tell you, well, if that hurts, don't do that. You know, manage your physical activity. Do a symptom log, right? You might get all kinds of recommendations that actually are hurting you in the long term. And they're keeping you in pain, keeping you in the disorder, keeping you in fear and avoidance. So more fear, more pain, more avoidance, more time lost, right? People, it's traumatizing. People lose relationships. Because they don't even care about their relationships anymore. They only care about getting out of pain. People lose jobs because they can't function. People become bedridden and on disability. Now, Dr. Sarno said that TMS is one of the most, the most painful disorder in clinical medicine. Okay, I came across a study that talked about how the toll of chronic pain was deemed as bad or worse than a terminal illness diagnosis. So these people who are on this downward spiral are very traumatized and afraid. And they acquire lots of bad habits and compulsions to try and alleviate and get relief from the discomfort, right? And this goes for anxiety too, like and OCD. So we go all the way back to like the beginning of a TMS disorder. It's the same thing with anxiety. So a person doesn't cope well with emotions and life adversity, and then they become highly sensitized. Their nervous system and brain become highly sensitized. Triggers start piling up. Fear, avoidance, and it can turn into things like agoraphobia, where somebody's afraid to leave the house, right? The brain will start to develop all these triggers. People become socially isolated. People also try and seek relief from their anxiety. And just like how TMS, the doctors are not much of a help, it's the same with anxiety. Doctors are not much of a help. I mean, you go to a doctor and tell them you have anxiety, they might give you some Xanax or put you on some Zoloft. Nothing against medication, but that's not going to cure you. And then they'll tell you to manage your stress. They'll give you some very vague tips like do yoga and meditation and do your sleep well. And people do all these things and they still don't get better. So more fear, more suffering, more bad memories start to accumulate, more trauma. And it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And unless this person, by accident or on purpose, comes across the correct information and implements it, they're never going to get better. TMS and anxiety and OCD can follow somebody to the grave. To the grave. You know, one of my good, I like to call her a colleague now, but like Sherelle Thinks, she has a great YouTube channel. She told me how her mom, was her mom or grandma? Maybe her grandma had health anxiety for her whole life, and she slept with the medical journal underneath her bed her whole entire life. Her whole entire life she thought she had cancer, and she died a peaceful death without cancer. So all that suffering for nothing. So you can take these disorders to the grave if they are not confronted. Dr. Sarno in his book in Divided Mind talks about TMS must be confronted. This shit has to be confronted. It's not going to go away on its own. Because what's going to happen if you don't confront this shit and you don't change your habits and the way you deal with stress and adversity and negative emotions, and you keep repressing or you keep avoiding, you keep compulsing, you keep obsessing, if you don't stop these things, one symptom's going to go away and another one's going to pop up. And it's just going to be a merry-go-round until you break that cycle. So one way or another, person hopefully is going to come across some information that's going to be helpful. My YouTube channel, a book, something. And if they implement these things, they can start getting better. So that's the downward spiral of acquiring TMS or an anxiety disorder or OCD. Now let's talk about the upward spiral. And trust, that downward spiral is horrible. It happens fast, and it can last a long time. And so once you've came across some information that can help you, we need to get you now on the upward spiral. So what's the upward spiral? You come across the information, right? You learn it. It makes sense. You might not get it all the way, but you see, like, I think this applies to me. I've had experiences like what he's talking about or what's in this book. Now I want to implement these things. You got to understand that your brain is designed for you to never get out of these things. Nobody has to teach you to become an anxious wreck. These are habits that are innate. Rumination, fear, the 5 F's, fear, focus, frustration, fighting, fixing. The anxiety and the OCD uses human nature to keep you in the disorder. It uses things you value and care about, right? It uses these things against you. And to do the opposite of these things is not natural. So your brain's not designed to come out of anxiety. It is. It is under the right circumstances. But what I mean is innately your habit is not to go to acceptance. Innately your habit is not to fear and not to worry about something you care about. Innately your habit is to worry about things that you care about, is to fear about things that you care about. So when we're on the recovery journey, we're literally going against the grain of what is innate human nature and doing something that is extremely hard. I had a client one time tell me that this feels inhumane. That's what he told me, because I told him he had to get off of the 5 F's, fear, focus, frustration, fighting, and fixing about his symptoms. And he said, Joseph, this is inhumane. This don't feel human. And I said, you are exactly correct. It is not humane. It is very difficult. It is very much not human nature to do what I'm telling you to do. You pretty much have to become superhuman. And I have a favorite saying, I am teaching fish how to fly. I'm teaching pigs how to fly. We are going against the grain of what human nature has, in years of evolution, has designed your brain to do, to keep you safe at the cost of all things. To keep you safe at the cost of all things, your relationship, your happiness, your well-being, your peace. And what I'm telling you to do is to flip that backwards and say, I want you to have peace and well-being at the cost of all things. So at the cost of your health, at the cost of your relationships, at the cost of your self-image, right? Because a lot of these anxiety disorders and TMS are cover-ups for thoughts and emotions that conflict with our self-image. So we need to actually feel those things that conflict with our self-image. And that's not humane. It's not humane to want to feel emotions that conflict with your self-image. It's not humane to confront and embrace thoughts and trauma that conflict with your self-image. The humane and natural thing to do is to preserve your self-image at all costs, even your peace and well-being. And I'm telling you to do the opposite. We need to release control of these things. We need to release control of these things. I was having a talk with a friend the other day who told me that she realized that she will do anything to keep from being rejected. If you have TMS, you might be watching this and thinking, what the fuck does this have to do with anything? It has to do with everything, because when we're in this paradigm, we are thinking psychologically now. We're not thinking physical no more. So she will do anything to keep from being rejected, but that's keeping her miserable. That avoidance of rejection is keeping her miserable. Rejection is an inevitable part of life, just like pain and negative emotions and adversity and uncomfortable thoughts that conflict with our self-image, right? Everybody has thoughts that conflict with their self-image. Some people have more because their brain is obsessive, but everybody does, here and there. And how you deal with that is going to determine whether you develop an anxiety disorder or not, or TMS or not, right? Everybody has an ache and pain here and there, psychosomatic. How you deal with that is going to determine if it turns into a full-blown chronic pain issue or not. So I'm here having to teach y'all to get on this upward spiral and to do the opposite of what you've been doing. If you've been suffering for years, do the opposite of what you've been doing for years. It's going to feel inhumane. It's going to feel unnatural. It's not going to feel good. It's going to feel awkward. You're going to feel like you're becoming a whole different person. You're literally becoming a different person. You're changing your personality. You're changing your habits. You're doing behavior change. Now, this is not to say that you have to freaking change your whole life. We're changing a few habits that are really bad, but they're really ingrained. And so you got to start doing the opposite of what you've been doing. If you're fighting, you need to surrender. If you're pushing away thoughts that are unpleasant, fears that are unpleasant, you need to embrace, you need to just let them be. Not push them away, not try and solve them, not try and analyze, not any of that. And it's hard. You know, and the upward spiral of recovery, you're going up, it's an uphill battle now. Downhill, it's so much easier to go down. The momentum, everything is avalanche effect. Up is going to take some work. And you're going to face a lot of resistance. Because, like I said, your brain is used to get this fear. It's used to these chemicals. And it's not going to give up easily. And that's for any behavior change. If you hated lifting weights and you wanted to start lifting weights, that would suck too in the beginning. And so you start practicing these things. Symptoms go up. That's common. When people first start practicing acceptance, they start letting go of this control and these bad coping habits. You're going to face resistance and you're going to break through that. And then what might happen is you might get some symptom relief for once. Woo! You know, you might get some symptom relief. When you get symptom relief, and you might get a symptom imperative. And now your job is not to fall into that. You do that properly, you're going to keep going upward and up on the upward spiral. And then you might have a whole day of symptom-free. You need to celebrate those things. Every victory on the upward spiral needs to be celebrated. Even when that victory is just, I didn't fight with my symptoms today. They were there all day, but I didn't fight with them. This obsession was constantly visiting me, these intrusive thoughts, yet I didn't fight with them. Those are victories that need to be celebrated. And then when you get symptom relief, like, whoa, the obsession didn't even come to me. I didn't even have an intrusive thought about that today. That needs to be celebrated too. Both the actions and the results need to be celebrated. And so you go up, you start getting confidence, right? You wake up one morning. I woke up one morning and it was like, my foot doesn't hurt this morning. Wow, like this is crazy. And I became so detached, which is what we want. We want to be unconcerned with our symptoms and our obsessions and our fears, that I didn't even realize it until like I would be in the shower already. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my foot don't hurt. But then sometimes later on in the day, my foot would hurt. That's fine. Keep going. Any little result, even if it's tiny, is proof for you that you're getting better and that you can get better. and that your brain is capable of healing. Your body's capable of healing any little result. So celebrate those. Remember those wins and forget the losses entirely. Forget the pain entirely every day. Start with a clean slate. But remember your wins. And I would wake up those mornings and I would just keep going and keep going and keep going. And then I realized for a week I didn't have a symptom. So that's the upward spiral. And you know, right now, I'm dealing with more psychological stuff. I don't have TMS anymore, but I still deal with anxiety. I still deal with OCD. And now I'm starting to have to break those habits that I implemented with the pain. And now I'm implementing them with things that regard emotions and psychology. I was able to ignore the pain. I was able to stop fighting with pain. Now I'm learning to stop fighting with thoughts and emotions that are conflicting with my self-image. All the things that the pain was covering up. But this is all the same. It's all, I recognize that this TMS, OCD, anxiety, right? Sarno would even see that the once the physical pain would go away, they would have like emotional symptom imperatives that were just purely emotion based, like anxiety, like OCD, things that are purely psychological based. It's all the same thing though. The brain's desire for control and fear of loss, right? Fear of rejection, fear of all the things we talked about. So I'm learning now to take those same principles and use them for psychological things that relate to emotions and psychology now, instead of just purely physical pain. So keep going. You're on the upward path. Keep going. Your brain will try and throw different things at you along the way. Resistance, which I have a video about how the brain is addicted to suffering and how it will use vulnerabilities and different fears to keep trying to get your attention back, to maintain that level of false control. But that level of false control keeps you in suffering. So if you're on the upward path, keep going. If you're coming out of the downward spiral, know that there's hope. You're not the only one. I pretty much described it exactly how everybody's story goes. I've heard a bunch of them. I've seen clients. I've watched so many recovery videos. And yeah, and if you want one-on-one coaching with this kind of stuff, hit me up. Link's going to be in the bio, guys. And if you like more stuff like this, subscribe, because more things are coming.